Think about the last time you got into an argument. Maybe it was with a coworker over a project, or with a friend about politics. You had your facts lined up. Your logic felt airtight. The other person was just being stubborn. We like to believe our minds are neutral judges. We think we look at the evidence, weigh it carefully, and then form our opinions. But that's not usually what happens. Instead, our minds operate a lot like a clever lawyer. The verdict is already decided. The lawyer's job is just to find the evidence to support it. This is the invisible architect of our reality. It's a collection of mental shortcuts and emotional defenses that shape what we see, what we remember, and what we believe. Poor thinking is expensive. It costs us money, time, and the quality of our daily lives. Good thinking doesn't just happen by accident. It is something you have to deliberately build. In this audiobook, we are going to explore how our minds trap us, how those traps spill out into our conversations, and how we can build a practical toolkit to break free. Let's start with a game. Imagine you're sitting in a room, and someone gives you 3 numbers. 2, 4, 6. They tell you there is a secret rule behind these numbers. Your job is to figure out what the rule is. To test your theories, you can offer your own sets of 3 numbers. The person running the game will just tell you yes if your numbers fit the rule, or no if they don't. You see the 2, the 4, and the 6. You immediately guess the rule is numbers increasing by 2. So you test it. You offer 8, 10, 12. The tester says yes. You try 20, 22, 24. Yes again. You feel confident. You declare the rule. Numbers increasing by 2. But you're wrong. The actual rule is just any ascending sequence. 1, 2, 3 would have worked. 10, 50, 100 would have worked. This was a real experiment run by a British psychologist named Peter Cathcart-Wason in 1960. He found that almost everyone fails this test the first time. Why? Because once they form a hypothesis, they only look for examples that prove it. They never try to test a sequence that might break their theory, like 5, 3, 1. Wason called this confirmation bias. It is the tendency to grab onto information that supports what we already believe, while ignoring or downplaying anything that contradicts it. This bias works in 3 ways. First is how we search for information. When we want to understand a controversial topic, we don't usually look at everything neutrally. We seek out sources that already agree with us. We hide in comfortable information bubbles. Second is how we interpret information. Even when 2 people look at the exact same data, they can walk away with completely opposite conclusions. Imagine a study where researchers gathered people with strong, opposing views on the death penalty. They had them read 2 fictional studies, one that supported the death penalty as a deterrent, and one that disproved it. Instead of finding a middle ground, both groups became more polarized. They praised the study that matched their view as highly rigorous. But when looking at the study that contradicted them, they suddenly became expert critics, pointing out minor flaws to dismiss it entirely. When we look at evidence we agree with, we ask, "Can I believe this?" But when we look at evidence we dislike, we demand, "Must I believe this?" Third is how we remember. Our brains are not video cameras. They are selective editors. We tend to recall memories that fit our current self-image. If you suddenly believe being extroverted makes you successful, your brain will start digging up memories of times you were outgoing. It quietly hides the times you wanted to be left alone. This selective processing can make us see patterns that don't exist. Take the common belief that rainy weather makes your joints ache. Researchers once tracked arthritis patients alongside daily weather reports for 15 months. The actual statistical link between their pain and the weather was 0. But almost every patient was completely convinced their joints could predict the rain. Why? Because when it rained and their knee hurt, they noticed it. They ignored all the sunny days their knee also hurt, and all the rainy days they felt fine. This is the echo chamber within. Long before social media algorithms were built to keep us clicking, our own brains were filtering reality to keep us feeling right. But these internal biases don't stay locked inside our heads. They spill out into our conversations and take the shape of logical fallacies. To protect ourselves, we need to understand a basic difference. There is a difference between an innocent mistake and a deliberate weapon. An innocent mistake happens in good faith. You think your argument makes sense, but you just made an error in logic. Let's call that a paralogism. A weapon is different. This is an argument deliberately constructed to look logical, but designed to deceive and win at all costs. Let's call that a sophism. Let's look at 3 of the most common weapons people use. The first is the straw man. This happens when you take someone's actual position, stretch it into an extreme caricature, and then attack that caricature instead of their real point. Imagine a workplace discussion about remote work. One manager says, "I think we should let the team work from home 2 days a week to improve their work-life balance." The second manager responds, "If we let people stay home and watch television all day instead of working, the company will go bankrupt." Notice what happened there. The second manager didn't engage with the 2-day hybrid schedule. They turned the proposal into an extreme cartoon of people lying on the couch watching TV. By knocking down the cartoon, they pretend they won the argument. The second weapon is the Texas sharpshooter. This comes from an old joke about a Texan who fires his gun at the side of a barn. Then he walks up and paints a bullseye around the bullet hole to claim he is a perfect shot. In real life, this happens when someone takes a massive pile of random data, zooms in on a tiny cluster, and invents a story to explain it, while ignoring everything else. A powerful example of this happened in a 1992 Swedish study. Researchers were looking into whether high-voltage power lines caused health problems. They surveyed people living near the lines over a 25-year period. They tested for over 800 different medical conditions. They found that children living near the power lines had a rate of leukemia that was 4 times higher than average. It sounded terrifying, but when other scientists looked closer, they realized it was a Texas sharpshooter fallacy. When you test for 800 different things, the laws of probability guarantee that at least one condition will show a massive spike, completely by chance. It's like shooting 1,000 bullets at a barn, and drawing a circle around the 2 holes that happen to land close together. Later studies failed to find any connection between the power lines and leukemia. The third weapon is the false dilemma. This is when someone takes a complex issue and shrinks it down to just 2 extreme choices. They force you to pick a side while hiding all the reasonable middle ground. You hear this in politics all the time. Either you are with us, or you are against us. Or, either we let the free market run wild, or we end up in complete government control. It works because it triggers our black and white thinking. It makes you afraid of the bad option, so you feel forced to choose the other one. It stops you from looking for a third path. Recognizing these tricks is our first line of defense. When someone makes a convincing argument, we have to look past their confidence and ask if they are using these weapons. So, if our brains are wired to fool us and our debates are full of traps, what can we actually do about it? The answer is building a habit of critical thinking. Good thinking isn't a talent you're born with. It is a habit you build through daily practice. There are 3 practical strategies you can start using today. The first strategy is using your wasted time. We all waste time. We sit in traffic, we scroll through our phones, we worry about things we can't control. What if you took just 15 minutes at the end of the day to reflect? Ask yourself a few questions. When did I do my worst thinking today? When did I do my best? Did I let negative assumptions frustrate me? If I had to relive today, what would I do differently? By asking these questions, you start to notice patterns in your own mind. You move from being someone who is unaware of their mental blind spots to someone who is actively practicing better thinking. The second strategy is the 5 whys method. This was developed by an industrial engineer named Taiichi Ono, who worked in the factories of Toyota. When a problem pops up, we usually rush to fix the most obvious symptom. But symptoms are rarely the true cause. Ono's method is simple. When something goes wrong, ask why. 5 times. Suppose your car breaks down on the way to work. Why did it break down? The engine overheated. Why did it overheat? The coolant leaked out. Why did it leak out? The radiator hose split. Why did it split? It was old and worn out. Why was it old and worn out? Because I missed the last 3 maintenance checkups. If you stopped at the first, why, you might have just poured more water in the engine and hoped for the best. But by asking why 5 times, you find the root cause. The problem wasn't mechanical. It was a habit of neglecting maintenance. The third strategy is redefining how you see things. Every situation we face is defined by our minds before we even react to it. If you define a difficult project as a threat to your reputation, you will feel anxious and defensive. But every situation can be defined in more than one way. If you consciously choose to redefine that project as a rare opportunity to learn a new skill, your emotional state shifts. You haven't changed the facts of the project. You just changed the frame. You turned a threat into a challenge. These 3 tools, reflecting on your day, digging for root causes, and choosing your frames, put you back in charge of your own mind. But developing a strong mind isn't a solo journey. To get really good at thinking, we have to engage with the world around us. Think about high-stakes environments like healthcare. When newly graduated nurses enter a hospital, they are hit with a flood of complex patient data. To make safe decisions, they can't just rely on rules they memorized in school. They have to learn to analyze situations on the fly. To help them make this transition, educators use tools like concept mapping and reflection groups. A concept map is just a visual diagram of a problem. Instead of listing facts in a straight line, you draw out how different pieces of information connect to each other. This helps you see the whole landscape before you make a decision. Even more powerful is a reflection group. This is when you discuss your decisions, your doubts, and your mistakes with a group of trusted peers. Talking out loud forces you to justify your thinking. It lets other people point out your blind spots. This practice builds 2 essential traits. The first is intellectual humility, which is simply the willingness to admit when you don't know something. The second is intellectual empathy, which is the ability to genuinely understand how someone else sees the world. Eventually, the path to clear thinking requires us to look at the groups we belong to. Every group, whether it's our family, our company, or our friend circle, puts silent pressure on us to conform. Groups control us by controlling the definitions we use. They decide what is cool and what is foolish. The master thinker is someone who has made clear thinking second nature. But they only get there by having the courage to step outside the crowd, question their own group's assumptions, and run their own mental experiments. Your mind is an ongoing experiment. You are not a finished product. Every day brings a fresh set of problems to solve and assumptions to test. The next time you feel completely certain about something, or feel a flash of anger towards someone who disagrees with you, just pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself if you're acting like a neutral judge or a defensive lawyer. Ask what evidence it would take to prove you wrong. Step out of the echo chamber. The work of keeping a clear and open mind is hard, but it is entirely worth it. Your practice starts today.